Good morning. Here we have the top of the 1711 that I spoke of in the last video. What I'm going to do this morning, briefly, is go ahead and begin doing some cleaning. Now, I'm not going to go anywhere near any crack that's going to need to be glued, because you obviously don't want to get any oils or anything in a crack where you're going to be using a nice hot hide glue. For instance, right here, I'm not going to get anywhere near this because this is going to have to be reworked. This crack, all of this. And basically, that means I'm going to be able to do everything pretty much to right there. Well, I'll be really careful. But I wanted to just illustrate something for you. This is an exceedingly old instrument, as I said in the previous video. And what I'm going to be doing is taking some wake polish, which I make myself. I'll put the formula up later on the old Fiddles New Life website that I now have going. But anyway, just to let you know, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and use some of the wake polish. I'm also going to use some steel wool initially, a little coarser steel wool, and this is just a very lightly take off surface because this is deep in old rosin that has accumulated over a long, long time. If indeed this thing is over 300 years old, or about 300, then this is very deep in rosin. This is under the fingerboard. You'll notice there's none out here where the bridge goes right here, and the end of the fingerboard is basically right there where you're seeing all this buildup. Well, what happens over time, people wipe off the rosin from around the fingerboard, a little bit that they can get under the fingerboard, but the fingerboard makes it almost inaccessible, and so whether you like it or not, that buildup continues under there unless you make it a serious effort to get under that fingerboard and try to wipe it clean. So what we're going to do this morning, I'm going to start working on this, and you're going to be quite amazed, I think, with how much crud comes off from this. I did one small section. I'm not going to show it to you because I want to show you how dramatic this is and how much stuff has accumulated on this instrument over a very, very long period of time. So I'm going to reset the camera, and then we're going to be off and running. For the sake of this video, I'm going to take this section right out of here for right now and just work on the other one. I don't want to be torquing it around and mess it up. So, okay. And I'm going to use some fresh paper towel each time after I do an application of the steel wool and the wake polish. Let me shake this up first. Yeah, when I make this, I make a decent sized batch because you believe me, you use it over a period of time. Okay, so I think we're just gonna start right down here, and I'm gonna get this is not a quote unquote dirty section we're looking at either. It is dirty, but it doesn't look it. Just wait till you see how much crud comes off from this. And the idea is not to try to get it all in one shot. You're using some fairly coarse steel wool here, and all that's for is to break up the crud. You can go to the very, very fine steel wool. This is 1/0, and I have some 4/0 that I'm going to be using a little bit later after we get the initial cruddy layer off from here. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I think I'm pretty much where I want to be. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to actually, I don't know what that paper towel is. Yeah, that's what I was using yesterday. Let me go get a fresh one here. All right, here we go. I'm going to take this. All right. Can you see that? I hope you can see this. I mean, that is filth. That is dirt that is accumulated over, like I said, a very, very long period of time. And that's just one application with this. We're going to keep going on this, and I'm not going to probably do the entire cleaning session, but I just wanted you to see what we're working with here. And by the way, already, here's the difference. Here's, if you can see that, okay, that's where we just cleaned it, and that's been wiped clean. That's not grease. Oh, excuse me. That's not wet from the polish. But you look at the difference. That's how much crud has come off the top of this instrument. All right, we're going to keep going for a little while. I'm anxious to get up here underneath. I'm going to continue working the G side of the instrument and work up here. And eventually what we're going to do, I'm probably going to just do up and to here and do this one section underneath the fingerboard, because believe me, you're not going to believe how much stuff is going to come off of that. Going to get another little bit of weight violin polish and keep going. By the way, the reason I'm doing this is that, well, it's like it was on my boat. I'm restoring an old sailboat right now, and the first day I got it, I mean, it was filthy beyond belief, and there were really important things that had to be done. I mean, you know, things that had to be done to even make it sail, okay? And it was gonna, and I knew it was gonna take a long time, because I think I'm now in the third year working on the thing. But anyway, what I did the first day I got it was to spend a lot of time on my hands and knees with soft scrub and a bristle brush, cleaning the decks of the boat. You know why I did that? Because what it does, it gives you incentive. When you get done, you say, okay, this is going to look fantastic, and just that psychological effect of seeing what it can become. It's a big deal. It really, really helps to give you the motivation to continue working on it. And so anyway, that's okay, I'm going to go ahead, and I think it's time for another pickup from the paper towel. I'm going to get another clean section. There's an old dirty one. Here we're going to go ahead and wipe this down. And this is by no means the last that we're going to do. Okay, can you see that? Oh, see, I don't know if you can see it because I'm not. Okay, there you go. You can see that. That's just with one application of the steel wool and the wake violin polish. All right, now we're finally going to charge into underneath the fingerboard, and we're going to see how much we get off here. And believe me, this is going to take far more than just one shot with this steel wool. This is going to take several applications to even begin to get down at it. When I did the old German Strad, I had this kind of a buildup between the end of the fingerboard and the bridge. And the thing about that was that that violin, I am convinced, was used as a fiddle, or a violin player that didn't care much about his instrument. Because what happens is that if you don't wipe it clean, and I mean on a regular basis, it builds up and builds up and builds up. And I'll tell you what, that poor old fiddle, and I'm convinced it was a fiddle, that poor old German Strad was caked, and it was as black as this is right here. I don't know if you can see this. Let me get this up to you. Okay, see how dark that is? Okay, let me just, it was so bad. And I did many, many, many applications before I finally got down to where you could start to see the varnish coming through, the regular color and varnish of the instrument. Now that's just your first application on the fingerboard area. And I hope you're seeing this. Yeah, you are. There you go. It's hard for me because of the angle I'm at with the camera right now. And go another one. right on top of it. And I'm being kind of rough with this. I'm not pushing down as to get down into the varnish so much as I am just trying to get down through the caked on rosin that has built up over so many years. The good news is all that rosin says that this instrument was played a lot over many, many years. And one of the things that helps a violin develop a sweet, wonderful tone is that idea of just playing it and playing it. And the more you play it, the more it's played, the more it's broken in and put through its paces, the more you're going to get that amazing sound. One of the reasons that Stradivarius and Guarneri's are such amazing instruments to listen to is because they're old and because they've been around a lot of years. Yes, they're made by master violin makers, but anyway, okay, this is a nice, clean part of the rag. We're going to do this again. And again, that's the second application. Same area that I worked the first time. You get the point here that, I mean, this instrument has been around so many years that, it's just seen a lot of, well, it accumulates over a long period of time. And that's what we're working with here. So I'm going to continue on this a little while longer. I don't think I'm going to do this section yet. One of the things I've got to contend with on this, it actually looks like this was, I don't know if you can see this. You know what? I may do this later and try to show it. But if you can see this, this actually looks like it was wet and actually kind of has some mildew on it, which means that this instrument was kept in a damp place for a time maybe. But anyway, or we've got something spilled on it. And anyway, that's going to have to be handled separately. For one thing, it's coming dangerously too close to all the work that I'm going to have to do to repair this instrument. So I'm not going to even mess with this probably until after that piece is glued back into the instrument and before we put in the new wood. So, all right, I'm going to keep working on this just a little while longer, and then we're going to call it for this section here. I just wanted you to see what we're dealing with here in terms of the age of the instrument. That when you have an instrument that is this old, that has been played this much over this many years, there's a lot of crud on this, and you got to take some time and some effort and patience to go get down through all those layers of caked on rosin that have been on there for so many years. So anyway, I'll shut up here and get some work done. All right, get a fresh, clean, now new rag, new one. Get too much crud on that. Okay, here we go. Now you're going to see less on this. But there you go. There you go. I mean, this is just, like I said, you get the point. Now, what I'm going to do here ultimately, after I do this initial cleaning, and is to go ahead and switch over to the 4/0, which is a much finer steel wool, and I'll gently work into all the little texture of the top. This top has been worn over a lot of years, and it's got stuff that's built up, and I'm going to have to go along and do the edges. You've got to be careful on the edges, though, because you're getting close to this. This is a glue line. This is where the top glues down to the rest of the body of the instrument, and you don't want to get violin polish anywhere near that, because that's got to be nice and dry and clear, so that that hide glue will take. By the way, just one last comment. I'm going to do one more application here, But one last comment is that on a violin, the only glue that you ever use is hot hide glue, and it comes in a crystalline form, and it's like well, it's not a powder exactly. It's kind of a crystal, very fine crystal formation, and you have to do it in a kind of a double boiler thing. They have professional glue pots. I have a setup where I use an old potpourri potpourri heater, and actually it's kind of like it's like a mini crock pot, and I put water down in there, and then I have a Pyrex bowl that I put my glue crystals in. I put them in there. I just cover it with water, just up to the top of the glue crystals, and then you put it down in there and you let it sit for a long period of time as that water heats it from the outside, and eventually it turns into this marvelous hot hide glue, and that's what you always use on violins. You don't use epoxy, you don't use super glue, you don't use Elmer's glue, none of that stuff. It's one thing only on violins, and it's hot hide glue. A little bit more here, and we're going to call it quits for this session. One thing I'm kind of pleased about, and it's doing the very thing I mentioned earlier, I'm pleased to be doing this because I'll be honest with you, it's getting me excited for how this is eventually going to look after all of the work is done. This is going to be a very old looking, but rather nice looking old instrument. There's a lot of patina here, a lot of character in this old top, and kind of anxious to have all this work done and put everything back together and set it up, and a lot of work ahead, many hours. But all right, I think that's it for now. We're going to do one more pickup of the crud that we've managed to loosen off from this instrument, and then we're going to call it quits for this, and we'll move on and do another section of the process that it's going to take to get this instrument back in playing condition. I think most violin repairmen would look at the mouse chew area and say, forget it, it's gone. And by the way, it indeed is rather tragically almost to that point. I'm probably being foolish for trying to bring it back, but I'm going to go. I'm going to try it anyway. So, all right, there's some more crud. All right, well, thanks for stopping by. Old Fiddles, indeed old Fiddles, New Life, and hope that helped you to get an idea of the beginning of the whole process here, and you can kind of see what it comes up to. And by the way, that's dry now. That's not that is not anything but clean or cleaned after the cleaning and using the Wake violin polish to try to get down into the crud. So, all right, thanks for stopping by. We're moving on. There'll be another section to this video, but for right now, it's a early morning, and I like to do them early in the morning because there's no distraction. My wife is not having the television going upstairs, or feet stomping around on the floor, the dog running, whatever. This is my time of the day, so thanks for being with me this early morning, and hope you enjoyed that. Good evening. We're going to do the bulk of this discussion tomorrow morning when everything is quiet, but right now everything is quiet upstairs, so getting ready to get the wood ready that I'm going to use to repair where the mouse chewed this out. One of the things that I'm dealing with here is that this, boy, I don't know where they got this wood, but let me tell you something. This spruce top is exceedingly fine grain. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, it is tight. I've got nothing that comes anywhere close. Nothing. I'm sure if you went someplace you'd find spruce that tight, but I mean that's just ridiculous there. I mean, it's hard to find spruce with that tight of a grain anywhere. But what I do have is this, and I've already used a piece of this for the little corner that I did on the German Strad, which that came out really well, and nobody could tell that it was even repaired. But anyway, but this is about as tight a grain as I've got, and it is wide. This is wider than the wide part of what's on that top. But what I'm going to do, the grain has to be absolutely perpendicular to the orientation of the top. And you can't just go doing a slab at an angle. So what I've done here, I've marked this out. And I'm going to go out on the table side and rip this at this angle right here. And what I want is that block right there. That right there. And take that and turn it around sideways. And I only need 2 inches of material. Well, this is about 3. And so that's going to be enough for me to use that as the wood. And boy, after that, it's all about getting this top glued back together to begin with before anything else can be done. The top has to be stable. And tomorrow morning we'll get into that. I will talk about the glue right now before we get started tomorrow morning. This is my glue pot. Actually, my wife got a crock pot and a baby crock pot. It was like a little, it's called the Little Dipper. This thing works wonderfully as a glue pot, let me tell you. I just put some water down inside this, and then this is a Pyrex bowl, as I've already mentioned in another video. And this is glue that's already been used, and it is watered down glue. In other words, it's glue that I've added water to over time, and it's good for small repairs and that kind of thing. But when you're doing a major seam, which this is right here, that means you've got to have fresh hot glue, and I'm talking about full strength. So what this is going to do, this is the beauty of this stuff. Let me see if I can get this out of here. See that? It lifts right out. That's what it looks like after it's all hardened up. That's glue. That's hide glue. So tomorrow morning, what I do is take this stuff. This is the crystal formation I was talking about in the other. And I just take this and I put like maybe a 1/4 inch of this stuff. And I'll get some out and show it to you. You can see it's like crystals. Okay. Well, that's going to use it, so I might as now let's get crap in it for right now. I'm going to clean out that bowl before I put that back in there. But anyway. Tomorrow morning I'll get about a 1/4 inch of those crystals and put down the bottom of that. Matter of fact, I'll do it before I go to bed tonight because you want it to sit overnight. And you put just enough water in there to cover the crystals and let it sit overnight. And by morning it completely absorbs, they completely absorb all the water. And what they are is just kind of this massive goo, very, very heavy goo. The cool thing is that as soon as you take that, well, not as soon as, but I mean, once you take that goo, crystalline hide glue stuff, and you put it in a double boiler situation here with the hot water around it, as it heats up and heats up and heats up, it becomes this gorgeous hide glue, just exactly the right consistency. And you just take a paintbrush and you very gently put that on the thing that you're going to be gluing together, and you're good to go. So that's what this stuff is. It's hide glue. And thankfully, you can still buy it fairly cheaply. I think this was £1 when I got it. I've used quite a bit of it over the years. So anyway, we'll get on that first thing in the morning. I'll set up the glue tonight. Like I said, get it in the bowl and cover it with water and let it absorb overnight. And then tomorrow morning, we'll get it heating. And we'll be ready to go ahead and glue this top back together. Going to be a delicate process. The alignment has to be extremely precise. And keep in mind here, it's not going to be just the gluing that holds everything, because after it's all glued in place, then repairs have to be made to the bottom side here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Here's a former crack where a crack was had all the way from the back of the instrument all the way up into the bottom of the F hole. And you can see what they did. These are little diamond patches, and I'll be doing the same thing, although I'll be cutting mine a little more delicately. These aren't too bad here. You know, what you want to do is have kind of a minimal profile on them. But what they do is just they stabilize that crack. But aside from the glue that's holding it, the diamond patches are a little cross precision holding the crack together all the way up and down that seam. Over here there was another crack, and you can see that they did the same thing. Anyway, so tomorrow morning we'll get started on this. But for tonight, I'm going to be cleaning up that crack and getting things ready and getting my glue ready. And we'll get back to you in the morning. Look forward to it. We'll see you early, probably about 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. One more little entry here before we move to tomorrow morning and doing the glue work. One of the things you always do when you're working on an instrument is to keep a container to hold all the pieces of the instrument as you disassemble it. And I have done that. Actually, this is it for right now. This is the saddle, which goes back here. This is, you know, kind of a unique saddle. It's unusual, but anyway, that is the saddle. I mean, it fits very precisely into the opening, and anything that comes off from it. And when this came apart, a little chunk of the purfling came out. That is the chunk of the purfling right there. And you save everything so that when everything goes back together, you can get everything looking like it was. And this will never look like it was, but we're going to make a good shot at it. So just wanted to say that if you ever work on a violin, be sure you keep a container with all the pieces in it that came off the instrument. Here, call it quits on that, and see you tomorrow morning. Well, good morning, and here's that wonderful hide glue. I got up right at 5 o'clock and got it going, but it is just really nice right now, looking good. And that is full strength hot hide glue. And in just a moment, we're going to get started with this. I'm going to set up first, and we'll see you in just a minute. Well, we're going to see how this goes. Hang on just a minute. I have got to locate. Where are my rubber bands? I got them right here. All right, so let's see how this goes. Sorry I can't show you a better view than this, but I've got to have this facing the light to be able to see where I'm putting that glue. It needs to be very precise. And I don't want to use too much because it makes for a whole lot of cleanup that is kind of unnecessary if you do it right. I think that's a pretty decent coverage. You know, we're going to get some squeeze out anyway, so I think we're going to get going on that. Okay, put the top back on the glue pot over here. And I'm going to just physically hold this for a long time. Now I've got I got rubber bands that are going to ultimately hold this in place. But right now, while I physically get it in place like this. Rub it together because I can feel where the notch is, where everything fits. I shut this off briefly while I made some adjustments. If I was a violin maker, I would have all kinds of fancy clamps. I have bar clamps that I use occasionally, but in a situation like this where it is really important that you maintain the flatness here, in other words, that the way that the seam aligns is going to be so that this is the way it's got to be once it's on the instrument. And so far, this is really, really good. I think I'm good. I've just done a little cleanup. This is just a piece of paper towel with some water on it. So I've come in afterward and cleaned up the residue of the hide glue. And so far, I like the way it's feeling. It's feeling like it's just about right on the button as far as the alignment is concerned. One thing I hadn't done earlier when I shot the last section, I had to get out of here and go do something for a minute. One of the things I hadn't done was to glue this section right here where the outside of the C-bout joins into the rest of the body, and I decided after getting this bottom section glued up, I really needed to do it while the glue was hot. Anyway, that's why I went ahead and just shut it off, because this is very delicate here, and I did manage to get everything glued up. The one thing I didn't get done was to get that one little piece of purfling in. That's going to have to be a separate operation, but this is all glued up now. Everything is all set. And at this point, it's got to sit for 6 hours. That's how long you leave hide glue under the clamps and let everything set up, and it should be really good. I think we've got a really good joint, as I've already mentioned. I come back to it now, and it's just feeling great. I'm thinking this is going to work out very well. But the good news is I got this section here done too. So now this whole piece is now rejoined to the body. Now, after all this is done, obviously this has got to be turned over before I can do any of this, and we've got to put in our patches on the back here, on the back of the top, so that it stays stable while we're doing all this correction work and putting in new wood to round out and restore the F-hole. Anyway, all right, guys, that's it. That's all we're going to do for this episode of Old Fiddles New Life, and hope you've enjoyed this. Hope you've learned a little something, and we'll carry on. See you in the next episode.